indicate to you a few of the things that I think are extremely important. So the most important thing, or one of the most important things that's going on at the moment, is the planet Neptune, right at the end of the Pisces stellium. So if you can see the planets there, we've got the Sun and Vulcan and Saturn and the North Node, the Destiny Point, and then Neptune, the 29th degree, void of course. And of course, Neptune's been, I don't know when Neptune got into Pisces, probably might have been about 14 years ago, something like that. Yeah, so it's the end of a 14-year cycle, but it's not only the end of a 14-year cycle, it's also this is the exoteric ruler of Pisces, and we're at the end of the Pisces age. So it's like the last gasp of the Piscean age as Neptune leaves Pisces. And, when I look at it, I think of this enormous cresting wave that's breaking and ending an era that's, 2,160 years. So it's momentous on the planet on so many levels, and not the least of which is momentous for the way, humans interact with each other on an emotional level, because we've got a great deal to do with the astral body here with all these planets in Pisces. The other thing that's particularly interesting with this Pisces stellium that's set up at the moment is that Saturn is on one side of the destiny point and Neptune's on the other side. So the destiny point's effectively, not quite, but around about the midpoint of Saturn and Neptune. And so, Neptune is the highest ideals for what was inaugurated a couple of thousand years ago. What was life meant to be all about, according to the avatar Lord Jesus? And then we have the reality of what have we created and what have we learned and what karma we've created. And then we have the destiny point, which is associated with the groups and the nations and the soul groups and the family groups and the individual and the racial and the national karma of every single soul on earth. So we have this interesting correlation of the hopes and the dreams of not only the last 2,000 years, but specifically the last 14 years, and what sort of karma humanity's been creating as a result of our actions. Now, that's if you look at this Pisces stellium from an exoteric perspective. But if you look at it from an esoteric perspective through the eyes of the soul, then you must look at the planet Pluto, because Pluto governs Pisces on a soul level. And the interesting thing about Pluto at the moment, and you can see it, is that it's really not interacting. These are just the transits for today taken from Daylesford. But Pluto's not interacting with many of the planets on the horizon in our solar system. It's at 3 degrees Aquarius. And we have a sextile, there it is, the sextile across to Mercury, and a semi-square, the little dotted line, across to Vulcan and Saturn. So effectively, the soul ruler is standing back, observing, waiting to see what the karma is that humanity chooses. Now, Neptune leaves Pisces and leaps on into Aries on the 31st, or is that the 31st of March, or is it the 30th? One of those, right at the end of this month. And there's a solar eclipse at exactly the same time. So we have this very strong focus about the end of an era, the last 14 years, the last 2,000 years, and the beginning of a new dramatic era. And the soul of humanity is watching to see what it is that we choose. Okay, now if we choose according to the highest vibration of Pluto in Aquarius, then we choose from the heart, and we choose communities, and we choose things that are better for humanity as a whole and for the international. But if we choose on a lower vibrational level, then we're fairly didactic, and we choose according to the rational mind, and we choose with the heart shut down. So they're the kinds of things that the Board of Karma, and I'm sure that the planet Saturn sitting on the North Node, the Board of Karma are very interested in what it is that humanity is choosing. Yeah, the other thing that I thought I'd point out at the moment that, of course, we've been able to see on our television screens is the Mars Chiron square. So you see the red line that goes between Mars in Cancer and Chiron in Aries. And this is a 3.5 degree square. Now, Mars falls flat on its face in Cancer, and you know, there's a tendency to think on a very clannish level, think of it like the crab. And people tend to revert to the national, what's good for me and mine and my family, and forget the international. And so there's a great danger when Mars is in Cancer for that. And then the square to Chiron triggers the issue to do with free will of humanity. So if we allow our leaders to drag us down nationalistic paths, well, we all know where that ended up. It ended up in the Second World War, you know, with a very strong nationalistic focus. But if, on the other hand, if we completely surrender our Chiron and Aries, we can move into anarchy. So there's this fine balance that's needed as to what are my needs and my rights and my free will versus what is it that's best for the planet as a whole. Yeah, okay. So that's one comment just simply on the planets at the moment. What I might do now is just find a couple of the leaders' charts, and I'm just going to close that. And if you have questions, if you can keep them, I'm going to talk for about half an hour, I think. And then if you have questions, we can see where it goes. Okay, so hopefully you can see that that chart that I'm showing you there. So what I have here is the chart of Donald Trump, who of course is dominating the headlines at the moment on the inside, and on the outside we have the transits for the day. So if you have a little bit of a look, let me get rid of that. So have a little bit of a look and see what it is that's going on in Donald Trump's chart. And of course we have to look at his chart because he's kind of dominating the headlines. Well, the first thing that I notice is the planet Uranus is on Donald Trump's midheaven. Okay, so he's shaking things up. And is he shaking things up for the better or for the worse? We don't know because we can't see the long range. But what we do know is that the old order is gone and there's a new order coming. Yeah. Another thing that I think is important to look at is that planet Neptune that is very much associated with the end of the Pisces age. Well, it's sitting on this 8th house cusp, this number 2955 Pisces, Donald Trump's 8th house cusp. Now, the 8th house cusp is a death point for everybody, for you, for me, for Trump, for everybody. So when Neptune sits there, I ask the question, is he an agent of transformation or is he writing his own death warrant? Yeah. Certainly Neptune's been hanging around these last degrees on and off for a few months, and there were a few assassination attempts on him in the last year or so. But that Neptune on the descendant, you've got to say, is he the saviour on the white horse to bring about the revolution, or is he writing the death of the old, but what is it that's being brought in new? So that's very important. And then the other thing that I think is important is Pluto, because Pluto, as we know esoterically, is associated with this clearing out of the past. It's to do with divine will and order in order to usher in the Aquarian age of the heart. Now, Pluto, that isn't very integrated in the transits at the moment, is sitting on the door to Trump's 6th house. And he's been doing a lot of house cleaning. And of course, in America, most people are up in arms about the fact that he's cancelling this and he's cancelling that and he's going through with a great broom through the government. And so the question to ask there is he doing this for dictatorial purposes, or is he doing it because it's a swamp that needs cleaning out? You know, and on a superficial level, one would say, well, you know, there's a great amount of harm that could come from such a clean sweep. But on another level, you might say, well, the deep state or the CIA or the, you know, the machinations that act like puppets to the various presidents that have been there needs to be cleaned out. So some of the dirty money and some of the dirty practices of government in America is in the process of being cleaned out. So that's two ways to look at it. Okay, another thing to look at is that transiting Mars. Yeah, the nationalistic potential for nationalistic let's look after just America and to hell with everybody else. Well, Mars, I don't know when it gets to his Saturn, but when it gets to his Saturn, we will find out whether Donald Trump has the international capacity and the international horizons there as his strong interest. Okay, I'm going to leave Trump's chart for the moment and just go on to, I'll see if I can find another chart. Just bear with me while I look for it. So if I take, let's say, Putin. Putin's also very much in the headlines at the moment. So if I look at Putin's chart, well, we'll see what's going on. There's that Mars that I was talking about, the Mars in Cancer, yeah, directly on Putin's Uranus. Okay, so we know that Russia, from the Western perspective, has been considered a threat basically ever since the Second World War. And so we had the Cold War for decades, and then we had the end of Russia and the end of the Soviet Union. But Mars is sitting on the Uranus there. And I think the issue that I would say with the transiting Mars on Putin's Uranus is he, can the family of Europeans relate to Putin, or is he the greatest threat to be pushed out? Yeah. So this is a question that we haven't got the answer to, but we certainly know that the wall that's been put down through Europe by NATO has kind of labelled Trump the enemy and NATO the good guys. But there's something going on here that says, okay, well, who is it who's being insular and narrow and secular and insular and disincluding Trump? And there's something about which family is Trump just connected to Russians, or is Russia a nation of the family of man? Yeah. Now, if we consider that the goal for the age of Aquarius, the age of the heart, is to have a family of man rather than blocks of power, then certainly something has to change with that. Other things to talk about with Putin's chart is Pluto, which, as I said, is the esoteric ruler of that Pisces stellium, this Pisces stellium here, that's largely being ignored in the transit graph because everything seems to be about Neptune at the moment. There's a great amount of emotional hysteria going on and a great amount of browbeating going on about who's right and who's wrong. And yet the esoteric ruler of the Pisces stellium, Pluto, sits in Trump's third house. Now, that tells me that Europe needs to talk to Trump. That Pluto's going through his third house. If you've ever been through a divorce, as I certainly have, you understand that if you don't talk to the person on the other side of the fence, nothing will be resolved. And there have been international leaders calling for dialogue. So I look at this Pluto and I go, okay, if Trump is frozen out of all discussions and the only person who's talking to him is Trump, the leader of the Americans, then where does this leave Europe? You know, it doesn't seem to make any great sense to me. Okay, I don't think, oh, look, there's one more thing that I might point out here. In the transit graph, the planet Jupiter is in Gemini at the moment. And we have, I don't know, is it 14 new states have joined NATO since 1949? Something like that. So Jupiter is approaching the 9th house cusp in Putin's chart. So I look at it and I think, okay, rather than the little factions, we need international dialogue. Yeah, Jupiter approaching the 9th house cusp, and it's not there yet, but it'll be there. I'm not sure when Jupiter gets to 24 Gemini, but if we don't start talking to Putin, well, we will have, you know, a third world war on the physical plane, because the need for dialogue is discussed there with the Jupiter. It's discussed here with the esoteric ruler of the Pisces rising in the 3rd house, and it's discussed here with this Uranus in the 9th house. And I was listening to something last couple of days where, you know, they say that in the early stages of the Ukraine war that there was dialogue, and it was shut down very quickly because of various political agendas connected to America and London. Okay, I'm going to leave Putin's chart there and see if I can find, how about I try Volodymyr Zelensky's chart and see what's going on with his chart. Okay, so here's the Pisces stellium that we were talking about, falling in Zelensky's chart, but I immediately noticed that the stellium's intercepted in his 9th house. Now, we do know as astrologers that when a planet, never mind a stellium, is intercepted, it's very difficult for the energy to flow out. Yeah. Now, Neptune, as I said earlier, is void of course, indicating that the game's up, time's over for the Piscean age, and that we need to move on to the Aries energy. And yet Zelensky's role as the leader of Ukraine is kind of trapped. You know, he's between a rock and a hard place. Now, whether he put himself there or he's been put there by Trump, well, that's a moot point, and many people are debating it. But certainly I can see that appealing to the masses on an emotional level will not get Zelensky anywhere because the stellium's intercepted. The other thing that I notice is, like in Putin's chart, Jupiter is applying to an angle. Now, in Putin's chart, it's applying to the 9th house, the house of the international matters. But in Zelensky's chart, Jupiter's applying to the ascendant. Now, normally you'd say this would be a fantastic placement to have Jupiter conjunct your ascendant. Wonderful things can happen. Except that if you look a little bit further, you'll notice that in Zelensky's chart, he has Neptune in a very difficult position. And that's Neptune just below the horizon in the 6th house, which is a fairly unfortunate placement because Neptune sitting there means that everything you see, that there's a lot more happening beneath the radar than what is seen or spoken about. We refer to this part of the chart as the part of the chart associated with the shadow. Yeah. So when Jupiter opposes, as it will do, not far down the track, Neptune, then things that have been hidden under the wraps, or that's the kindest thing to say, but it could also be out and out lies, or it could be deliberate misleading of people, his people, that those kind of matters will be brought to the fore. So, you know, when I look at Zelensky's chart, I don't see anything hopeful. I continue to look and I notice Pluto, the esoteric ruler, is on his sun, very close to his sun. And because Pluto's moving very slowly, it's probably going to take until the end of, 2025 until it crosses the sun. But, there's the end of some matter, and his sun sits in his 9th house. So I guess I'd have to say that he will disappear from the world stage. Yes, so I have a disappearing from the world stage. I have a difficulty um, uh, being able to make a great difference and a whole lot of an emotional storm going on. I have things hidden that we will be revealed. And then we have transiting Uranus that's just gone into his 12th house. Now, esoterically, that's got a great deal to do with either the clearing up of old karma or the creating of karma, you know, but it's certainly not a visible planet. And so there's nothing in Zelensky's chart that gives me hope that he will stay prominent or stay a leader or stay on our television screens going forward. In fact, quite the opposite. And it's also possible that he may create great karma, you know, for the various actions that have been undertaken. And of course, it's the more you look, the harder it is to kind of get to what's really going on, because one thing we can be certain of with Jupiter in Gemini is that the messages are extremely mixed and that there's a lot of, unfortunately, propaganda. Jupiter is in a very, it doesn't function well in Gemini, you know, it's very flat. What else can we see? I was going to show you NATO's chart. So there's the NATO chart with the current transits. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you. I talked before about Saturn and how humanity, that I believe that the Board of Karma are extremely interested in the decisions that humanity are making at the moment. And I didn't tell you, but you see the downward pointing arrow, that's Vulcan. And Vulcan brings in spiritual fire, and it brings in divine will, and it's a parting of the ways. And it looks for all the world as it's sitting there. It sort of reminds me a little bit of, you know, the parting of the Red Sea when Moses was trying to lead his people to the promised land. You know, that's what Vulcan's trying to do, is to show us a clear path forward beyond delusions, confusions, lies, the emotionalism of the last 14 years. And we need to operate from the broader perspective. Now, this is the planet Saturn sitting directly opposite the ascendant of NATO. So this is the NATO chart from the 4th of April, 1949. And, you know, Virgo rising says you must attend to the details. Yeah. So I start thinking about, well, you know, the initial promises of NATO and then the extra 14 plus countries that have come in, and then the various agreements that have been made and then broken. You know, the Minsk agreement, for instance, the things that have happened since the USSR was no longer functioning. The Soviet Union was no longer functioning. And I look at Saturn. Now, if that was in my chart, I'd need to do a bit of navel gazing, because there'd be a certain amount of karmic matters that would need to be addressed around my relationships. So this tells me that the relationships that NATO has, both with Europe, and I don't think I told you, but the sign of Pisces, broadly speaking, governs Europe. And of course, we know that NATO is not just Europe. It's many other countries these days. But NATO needs to do some self-examining and, dare I say, do a bit of a review. Because it's clearly necessary with Saturn sitting on the descendant. And then there's the transiting Jupiter applying to the midheaven of the NATO Gemini midheaven. So we've seen it 3 times now. Zelensky has Jupiter approaching his ascendant. Putin has it approaching his international cusp, the 9th house cusp, and NATO has it on its reason for existence in the world, the midheaven. So, and this is Gemini. This is talk that attends to the details and deals with the karma. Yes. Okay. And then the other thing is the, oh no, that's not right. That's an error. Okay. So I think I might leave that. And I know I'm talking quite quickly about these, but there might be one more that I might look at before we just open it up for discussion. Oh, I have the, oh, I haven't done it here, have I? I've got the solar eclipse chart. No, hang on a second. Don't mind me fiddling around here. I'm looking for the solar eclipse chart. And hopefully, sorry, I can't look at your, okay, so there's the solar eclipse chart on the 29th. And as I said, Neptune moves into Aries the following day on the 30th. Okay, so the first thing to notice about that really is this enormous focus, and this is from Baffin Island, up in the, one second, up in close to the North Pole, right? So all of these planets in the ninth house, which tells us that the international agreements, all the international agreements, United Nations, NATO, IMF, all of them are up for radical transformation, as we have the Pisces. By the time we get to the end of the month, not only do we have a Pisces stellium, but the Sun and Mercury and the Moon and Vulcan and Chiron have all moved into Aries. So effectively, we have two stelliums going on. Yeah, this is enormously potent energies to transform the world stage in the international arena and, of course, international trade. Yeah? And again, we see the challenges. Is Mars in Cancer. There's that non-sacred planet sitting on the ascendant. If we all think about our own sphere and are unable to look at the big picture, well, drama will happen. And then I notice the planet Chiron on the midheaven of this solar eclipse chart. So we have a crisis of gigantuan proportions. And here's the esoteric ruler, Pluto. Now, if that was an individual's chart, you'd say, okay, well, if you, in order to move overseas, your ninth house, first you've got to clean up your current life. You have to clean up your relationships. And there's the Pluto. It says clean up the relationships between the international bodies and the international rulers so we can move forward and move out of nationalistic positions where you're looking and thinking only about your own small corner of the world. Okay, I think I might